You probably already know the obvious ones: smoking, heavy drinking, junk food, no exercise. And look, if you have cleaned those up, you deserve credit for it. But here's the thing most men never get told. You can do all of that right and still be hitting your vascular system with 7 daily habits that are doing quiet, consistent damage to the exact biological machinery that controls blood flow. 7 habits that have absolutely nothing to do with the usual list. I mean, we are talking about data showing a 75% higher risk of erectile dysfunction just from breathing through your mouth at night. 75% from how you breathe while unconscious, or daily antibacterial mouthwash, wiping out the exact molecule that makes an erection physically possible. Even a common vitamin D drop can spike ED prevalence by 12% for every 10-point dip in your blood levels. There is even a massive Harvard study showing that simply wearing tight underwear daily triggers chronic stress markers and impairs testicular function. Not lifestyle habits, daily habits, things happening before 9 in the morning. If you have already cleaned up the obvious ones and you are actually still noticing a decline, this is probably why. Because these systems are so deeply connected, I actually put all of this together into my free erection, quality, and ED blueprint. It completely bypasses the generic wellness advice and maps out the exact biology we are talking about today, alongside a highly practical step-by-step daily routine. It is completely free, and please grab it whenever you want at the very first link down below. Let me walk through all 7. The first one is the most physical, the most visible, and honestly somehow the one most men have never once thought about in this context. What you are wearing right now, specifically your underwear. See, the tissue responsible for producing testosterone sits outside the main body cavity for a very strict biological reason. It demands an operating temperature roughly 2 degrees below your core body temperature. That isn't a suggestion. It is a precise, non-negotiable physical requirement. When Harvard researchers tracked over 650 men, they found that those wearing tight underwear daily had significantly lower sperm concentrations and heavily elevated levels of a hormone called FSH. Think of FSH like a warning light flashing on your dashboard. When your brain senses that the tissue down there is overheating and struggling, it floods your system with FSH to try and force a failing engine to work harder. In fact, men in tight briefs measured scrotal temperatures nearly a full degree Celsius higher than men going commando, and that heat gap stayed elevated for hours every single day. That means sustained heat, sustained hormonal stress, and steady damage to the cells that synthesize your testosterone. Yet most guys have been doing this since their 20s without a second thought. The fix: loose cotton boxers or nothing at all. That is the entire intervention. It costs $0 and takes zero effort, but you will almost never hear a urologist bring it up in a standard consultation. This next habit genuinely surprised me the most when I started digging into the clinical data, mostly because men do it specifically to be healthier. It is your daily mouthwash. I will be honest, I want to be incredibly precise here because the biology is fascinating. Your mouth houses a very specific colony of bacteria that your vascular system completely relies on to convert dietary nitrates into nitric oxide. Scientists call this the enterosalivary pathway. You eat your leafy greens, beets, or arugula. The bacteria on your tongue immediately start converting those foods into nitrite the moment you chew. You swallow it, hits your bloodstream, and it becomes nitric oxide. That is the literal fuel line for your erections. But when you use an antibacterial mouthwash, you kill those bacteria. Not selectively, not just the bad guys. It completely wipes the colony, and when that colony is gone, the entire conversion pathway shuts down. Clinical trials show that using these rinses twice a day drops plasma nitrite levels within days, directly starving your body of nitric oxide. A separate long-term study even linked frequent mouthwash use to a significantly higher risk of developing high blood pressure. It's the exact same mechanism. Fewer bacteria means less nitric oxide, stiffer blood vessels, and higher pressure. And when you have high pressure inside stiffened, the smallest microarteries, the ones feeding your anatomy, are always the very first to fail. The irony here is wild. Guys are eating beets and loading up on salads to boost their nitric oxide, then immediately rinsing with a product that destroys the exact biological tools needed to process those foods. They are filling the gas tank while cutting the fuel line. Normal toothpaste doesn't do this. Flossing doesn't do this. It is strictly the antibacterial rinse. So swap it out or drop it entirely. That is all it takes. Moving on to the third habit. This one is completely invisible, accumulates silently, and currently affects roughly 40% of American men. A basic vitamin D deficiency. And it isn't happening because of a bad diet or some ultra-rare medical condition. It is simply because we spend our waking hours trapped indoors. Here is the underlying mechanism that rarely gets explained properly. Your vitamin D receptors sit directly on the endothelial cells that line the inside of your blood vessels. When you have optimal vitamin D, it actively supports an enzyme called nitric oxide synthase, which is the literal factory that manufactures nitric oxide right inside those vessel walls. If your vitamin D plunges, that factory slows to a crawl. A comprehensive analysis published in late 2025 reviewed data from over 13,000 men. The researchers found that those with moderate to severe ED consistently carried significantly lower vitamin D levels than men with normal function, and this held true regardless of their age, lifestyle, or overall cardiovascular health. The correlation is incredibly stark. Every single 10-point drop in blood vitamin D levels was tied to a 12% increase in ED prevalence. If you are spending 8 hours a day under office lights, commuting in a car, and eating lunch at a desk, you are almost certainly running on empty. The solution is simple. Get 10 to 20 minutes of direct midday sun on exposed skin, or look into a quality D3 supplement. Most clinical data points to 2,000 to 4,000 IU daily for men over 50 who aren't outside regularly. Just please get your levels tested. You won't physically feel a vitamin D deficiency until it has been draining your system for a very long time. Habit number 4 might sound the strangest, but it has the most immediate physical impact on the biology we've been breaking down: how you breathe while you are asleep. Most men assume breathing is entirely automatic and neutral at night. The data tells a completely different story. Actually, your nasal sinuses are one of the primary production factories for nitric oxide in the entire human body. As air rushes through your nasal passages, nitric oxide gas is generated in those sinus cavities, pulled straight into your lungs, and absorbed right into your bloodstream. But the moment you drop your jaw and breathe through your mouth, that production drops to zero. The sinuses are completely bypassed. The gas is never made. A massive population study tracked 154,000 people and discovered that men with chronic conditions that forced mouth breathing had a 75% higher risk of developing erectile dysfunction compared to nasal breathers, 75% entirely based on airflow, and this is precisely why it matters so much for men over 50. Nasal congestion, structural changes, and habitual nighttime mouth breathing become drastically more common as we age. Most guys have no clue it's even happening. They just wake up with a dry mouth, maybe some mild snoring, and assume it was just a restless night. They don't realize their body was entirely starved of nitric oxide for 7 hours straight. Using medical mouth tape designed specifically for sleep is the most direct way to fix this. It sounds strange, I know, but the science behind it is incredibly rock solid. If that feels a bit too intense to start, high-quality nasal strips that physically open the airways from the outside are an excellent alternative. Either way, the objective remains identical. Force the air through the nose. Let your sinuses do exactly what evolution built them to do every single night. Let's look at the 5th habit. And I will be honest, this one is going to irritate a lot of guys who are just trying to manage their joint pain. Popping a daily ibuprofen or naproxen to stop inflammation. Non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, NSAIDs, work by blocking the production of specific compounds called prostaglandins. But prostaglandins do a lot more than just signal pain. They are the exact lipid compounds your body uses to relax the smooth muscle inside your penile tissue. When you block them systemically to fix your bad knee, you block the relaxation required to let blood flow in. A massive Kaiser Permanente analysis tracked over 80,000 men and found that regular daily NSAID users had a 40% higher risk of erectile dysfunction, and that was after adjusting for age, weight, and blood pressure. The medication itself was acting as a chemical tourniquet. Habit number 6 is another medication most men take without a second thought: your daily allergy pill. Over-the-counter antihistamines are designed to block histamine to stop you from sneezing. But here's the biological blind spot. Histamine is one of the primary chemicals your nervous system uses to trigger sexual arousal and dilate blood vessels. When you block histamine receptors, you are literally turning off the switches that signal the vascular tissue to open up. Older first-generation antihistamines cross directly into the brain, dampening nerve signaling and causing a localized drop in blood flow that can completely flatline an erection. If you have been taking an allergy pill every morning and wondering why things feel disconnected by the evening, the pill is doing exactly what it was designed to do. It is blocking the signal. And finally, the seventh habit. This one is entirely mechanical. Sitting for 2 hours straight before 10 in the morning, your commute to work straight into your desk chair. All of the blood supply and nerve signaling required for an erection travels through a highly specific pathway in your pelvic floor, primarily governed by the pudendal artery and the pudendal nerve. When you sit out of alignment for hours at a time, you place the entire weight of your upper body directly onto that pelvic floor. It acts exactly like stepping on a garden hose. It creates chronic tissue tension that compresses the pudendal nerve, restricting both the blood volume that can reach the anatomy and the nerve impulses required to keep it there. Physical compression leads directly to vascular restriction. Like I said, the body wants to work. We just have to stop fighting it, get a standing desk, break up the commute, take the physical weight off the system. When you actually look at the clinical data, the entire narrative changes. It stops being about just getting older and it starts being about removing the hidden friction in your routine. Your body desperately wants to function correctly. You just have to stop accidentally fighting it. If you want a strong foundation to lean on while you work on fixing these daily habits, nitric boost formulation I mentioned earlier is linked in the description. It provides the exact raw materials, the L-citrulline, the beetroot, the iacrin, to help reopen those pathways while your body recalibrates. And please don't forget to grab that free blueprint guide while you're down there. As always, I am a researcher sharing the data to help you make informed decisions. If something feels seriously wrong, get a proper panel done with your physician. I'm Reena. You have far more control over this than you've been told.